Hey everyone, I hope you're well. This is the story about what if Naruto went to Demon Slayer universe. Before we start, please subscribe to the channel and like the video as well. So without any further ado, let's start the what if. Mother wanted it to end. She was tired. So tired of the pain and suffering. So tired of the abuse at her family's hands, at Rui's hands, specifically. No one cared about her. No one wanted her around. Despite being the mother, she was constantly scorned and humiliated. She was the target of everyone's frustrations, their frustrations at this sham of a family. A scream cut through the air. Mother flinched, covering her ears. She hated the screams. She hated their cries for mercy. It stayed with her, always. And things had only grown worse over the past week, when countless demon slayers had been lured into the mist, into a trap that left them nothing but suffering, fear, and cries of desperation. As a demon, she harmed humans. She killed them. She wasn't innocent. She had blood on her hands. But she'd never wanted to make them suffer. Not really. Usually, she snapped their necks when they were ensnared in her webs. Made it quick. Painless. However, that philosophy of hers had been thrown away the moment those upper moons arrived. Instead of killing them instantly, she now had to capture them, keep them from escaping the mountain. She pretended to be cold and callous, especially when daughter was around. But deep down, she wasn't like that. Deep down, she wasn't a maniacal killer that laughed when her enemies suffered. Mother frowned, biting her lips. This wasn't her fault. She'd had to do it. They made her do it. If she didn't try to capture them, then she would be tortured. It hurt terribly. She didn't want to feel pain. Who in their right mind did? Her eyes gouged from her skull. Thousands of cuts upon her body. Her entrails pulled out, tied around her neck, strangled by father. Her limbs frozen and shattered to a million pieces. She'd experienced it all, and she did not want to go through that pain again. She was a coward. Mother knew this. She hated herself for it, for being so weak, for being abused without standing up for herself. She wanted to cry. That was all she seemed to do these days. Curl up in a ball and weep. Upon her lone rock, she sat silently. This was her favorite spot on the mountain. It was a small clearing, surrounded by towering trees and blooming flowers. Here, she could normally see the moon, could bask in that subtle glow shining from above. The closest thing to sunlight since she became a demon. But now, with all this mist, with Lower Moon 3's technique perpetually active, even the luxury of seeing the moon had been taken from her. She had nothing now. Because of the 12 Kazuki, her life had gone from horrible to unbearable. Rui had gotten worse, more violent, more temperamental. He was angry and took it out on her. She didn't know why. Perhaps he felt the need to prove himself to the upper moons. Maybe that was the reason for his newfound frustration. She pulled her knees into her chest. Upper Moon 2 was far worse. He was a monster, a nightmare. All this failed behind an innocent face. She'd seen what he did to those demon slayers, heard their screams. Mother trembled. His eyes had burned like the hottest flame. His cold eyes and fake smile had made her feel sick. Mother shut her eyes. She just wanted to die, to be released from this cell. She wanted to stop hurting, wanted to end the torture. She regretted coming here. She regretted ever becoming a demon, and she regretted all this killing. Nothing but killing. She first entered this mountain to find safety from demon slayers hunting her, only to be thrust into an even worse nightmare. Maybe she should have just let herself be killed back then. Mother flinched, looked around. The sound of an explosion suddenly reached her ears. She stood on her rock. In the distance, trees were collapsing, some thrown high into the air. Dust and dirt rose above her, swirling with the mist. Mother closed her ears. So terrible was the destruction that she could feel the ground shaking, could see it cracking, even from this distance. Fear flooded her chest. She wondered what it was, and if she was next. Mother wanted to run away, wanted to abandon her post for good. But she knew. She just knew. No matter where she went, Rui would find her. His blood was in her, after all. Circulating through her veins. She gripped her head in panic, pulling at silver-white hair. No, no, no. I have to keep trying, Mother cried. Or they'll hurt me. I don't have a choice. Who the hell was that? Susumu stared. Just stared. Upper Moon 3, she answered, eyes wide. Naruto placed her down gently. And despite the situation, Susumu found herself missing the warmth he brought, now contrasted with the icy air that filled the mountain. Really? The blonde asked. He seemed genuinely surprised. Susumu nodded once more, confirming the demon's identity. Naruto crossed his arms and looked ahead, where his Rasengan had traveled. The destruction was absurd. The trench it carved extended for over 200 meters, with tons upon tons of dirt, rock, and trees displaced from the earth in a matter of seconds. In that moment, she saw his eyes return to normal. From golden to sea blue. The last vestiges of natural energy left his body, used up with what she'd heard him call planetary Rasengan. I might have actually killed him, Naruto remarked, frowning deeply. Maybe I went overboard. An innocent demon slayer could have been caught in that attack, especially with all this fog obscuring our view. Susumu looked ahead, surveying the damage with intrigue. Naruto had been so calm, not hesitating as an upper-ranked demon practically appeared from nowhere and tried to attack him. She glanced at her palm, wondering if her own pseudo Rasengan could ever match Naruto's. Not now, obviously, but in the future. Could she one day be strong enough to be considered as equal? Susumu shook her head, pushed that thought from her mind. Now wasn't the time to think of such things. Naruto continued to survey the environment, then said, "Weird." She tilted her head. "What is it?" "Look." He pointed forward, and she understood. Just moments earlier, they had been able to spot the path of destruction his Rasengan created. However, they could no longer see ahead of them. The mist, that thick annoying mist, had returned, covering everything in sight, altering their very perception of the forest around them. It was strange, far different from natural mist. More peculiar. Denser. The fog almost seemed alive, swirling about, even when she suddenly waved a hand through the air. "Stay close to me, Sue," Naruto instructed. She did just that, standing by his side. He then attempted a technique, one that, she figured, would help determine the properties of this mist. He held his palms out, summoning a spinning sphere of wind. It rotated quickly, covering both he and Susumu in a dome of air. Then he let it spread, until the sphere extended, pushing back the haze around them. "It's working," Susumu commented. Within the sphere of wind, she could actually see the forest 20 meters ahead. "Only temporarily," he replied. Because the moment Naruto collapsed his dome, the mist came rushing back, ensnaring them once again in a world of white. Susumu groaned, increasingly annoyed. It was like snow. Dense, cold, and unnaturally prominent. She felt as though she could reach out, touch it, and mold it in her hands. Worse yet, the mist seemed to be growing thicker as time passed. "How the hell are we supposed to get anywhere in this?" she hissed. "We'll find a way," Naruto reassured, placing a gentle hand on her back. She relaxed, then nodded. After all, she could sense demons, and he could sense negative emotions. So, their best bet would be to follow the direction where either source was prevalent. Susumu stiffened, a sudden chill running through her. Out of the corner of her eyes, she saw something. She wasn't quite sure what, but it was gone as soon as it came, blending into the white smog. For a moment, she wanted to go after it, wanted to sprint ahead, pulled by a sudden urge. However, with Naruto here, she couldn't risk being separated. So, she planted her foot down, thinking. Was someone watching them? Naruto's eyes narrowed. He kept his guard up, glancing about in a suspicious manner. Had he noticed something as well? She wanted to ask, but he quickly took her hand. They walked until he found the nearest tree in the area. It was a tall one, reaching so high that it disappeared into the mist. With Susumu still by his side, Naruto found the trunk, palm against its rough surface. "Stay here, okay? I'll be right back," he said. She arched a brow. "Your seals." Naruto nodded. He jumped upward, locating the tallest branch. She could hardly see him, even with her perfect vision. He was pulling out a slip of paper, a seal, with the intent to affix it to the highest point of the tree, before activating its complicated mode of action. She still didn't understand how it worked, despite his best efforts to explain the process. From what she'd learned from his explanations, Naruto was using the tree as a sort of power line, just without the wires. Presently, they were miles away from Tokyo, miles away from his clinic, making it far more difficult to transmit chakra at a constant, uninterrupted rate to sustain his project back home. With this seal, however, he could wirelessly send chakra long distances if he so pleased. On their way to headquarters, he detached a few dozen of them at the tallest trees, or building, they came across. In the same way Nagato, someone he'd mentioned, but she didn't have a clue about, transmitted his chakra across vast distances. Naruto was copying the same principle, modifying it, and making the concept more efficient. In essence, he created various wireless power lines by attaching transmission seals to tall structures, whether they be trees or buildings in town, allowing him to keep transferring chakra to his clinic, even outside of Tokyo. A real head-scratcher, that was. Susumu couldn't fathom how he and all the people from his planet came up with this stuff. Finishing the seal, he descended the tree and landed beside her. She crossed her arms. "Did it work?" Naruto grinned. "Yeah. I can feel my chakra being pulled toward the tree, before being sent off into the distance toward the next transmission seal I placed in that town, you know, the one with the amusement park." His smile soon turned into a subtle frown. He turned back to look at the tree. The fog was getting thicker. I couldn't see anything from up there. Not even the sky. Susumu grimaced. "Then, this has to be a blood demon art. A powerful one, too," she speculated. "Must be another member of the 12 doing this. So, there's more than just one on the mountain." "I think so." Susumu closed her eyes, feeling the area around her. "I can't tell how many demons there are. There's a lot, though." Naruto nodded, then adjusted the scroll around his shoulder, seemingly deep in thought. "What's the plan, Naruto?" she asked after a moment. "Since we're here, we help as many demon slayers as possible." He looked around. "And most importantly, we make sure Michiro, if he's on the mountain, is safe. Right? Yuichiro's brother." Naruto was a kind person. She didn't need anyone to tell her that. But he wasn't only doing this out of the goodness of his heart. As long as Yuichiro was involved, he'd dive into any situation, any circumstance, if it meant the kid would be happy. Susumu smiled at that, strangely remembering her own family. Then, like before, a shadow passed through the mist, dark against a world of white. She glanced to her left, startled. "Did you see that?" Susumu whispered, now on edge. Naruto looked around. He was on edge too. "No." He hesitated, then said, "But I saw something earlier." They shared a look. "The mist," Naruto began. "Maybe there's more to it than just keeping us from seeing ahead." Susumu inhaled sharply, eyes growing wide. Again, something was in the mist, and it was warping, first from a dark shadow, to the silhouette of two people, then a clear picture, with hands, feet, clothing, and faces. Her long-dead mother and father were standing here, right in front of her, smiling. Naruto knew something was wrong when his friend froze in place. Orange Haori flowing in the icy wind, hands going limp at her sides, she grew eerily still, like a statue, staring at something. The two shadows he could not make out. She could see them, though, looking on as though someone had come back from the dead. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Susumu startled back to reality. She glanced behind, eyes glistening, a look of anguish on her face. Naruto's heart lurched at the sight. He'd never seen her make such an expression, one so full of sorrow. "What's happening?" he asked, concerned. "What do you see?" Susumu swallowed. My parents." Something else moved across Naruto's field of vision. He spun, finding more figures in the mist. This time, however, he could make them out as clearly as someone standing right in front of him. Naruto's eyes narrowed to slits. The demon responsible for creating this mist would not fare well when Naruto finally found them. Because this was too much, too cruel. Right before him was a younger Sakura and Sasuke, from the early days of Team 7. Kakashi was there too, his single exposed eye closed in a signature smile. Sakura also smiled at him, and Sasuke had his arms crossed, that ever-present scowl on his face. "Naruto, you idiot," said Sakura in a stern yet endearing tone. "Why are you standing over there? We have to leave for the mission." Sasuke glanced his way. "Come on. Don't waste our time." "And here I thought I was the late one," Kakashi added. Even their voices sounded real. Too real. Naruto knew this was an illusion. He had enough experience fighting Sharingan users to know this. Yet, he felt his heart being tugged. He hadn't seen them in so long. He'd nearly forgotten their faces. Sasuke, too. As much as he despised what his friend had become, seeing him in this younger state made the memories come rushing over him like an avalanche. For a moment, he froze. Sakura's features fell, and she looked sad. "You don't want to come with us?" she asked, staring down at her feet. "Is it because I called you an idiot just now? I didn't know you take it so seriously. Sorry." Naruto shut his eyes, then formed a hand seal. He flared his chakra to dissipate the illusion. Nothing happened. He tried again, but the image of Team 7 remained. "It's not an illusion, not entirely," Kurama rumbled from deep within him. "Then what is it?" "A mirage created by the mist," explained the Bidger. "Similar to the second Mizukage's technique." Naruto frowned. He'd arrived at that battle after Gar already defeated the Itokage. But he understood what Kurama was trying to tell him. He couldn't dispel these mirages by disturbing his chakra network, because these things were real, not just an internal image generated by his mind, but also ones created using the water vapor around them. A twofold illusion. Naruto took a kunai, and threw it toward the mirages. His blade passed through them, distorting them, as though they were projection. That was all there was to it. It was a cruel trick created by the mist. Somehow, maybe by them breathing the mist in the blood demon art, I'd been able to access their memories, using it against them. To fool them. To slow them down. To make them hesitate. Despite knowing this, Naruto still felt his gaze soften at the sight of his old team. As if on cue, someone else appeared. Jiraiya. He materialized next to Kakashi, grinning widely, orange book held lazily in one hand. "Come on, kid. Let's get going. I still have to do some research before sundown." That voice. It was so real. So familiar. He hadn't heard it in years. Naruto exhaled, forced himself to look away from them no matter how much it hurt to do so. This wasn't real. He turned to Susumu and he found her shaking, trembling. Seeing her like this hurt him deeply. Naruto snapped out of his stupor. He hugged her then. She didn't stiffen, didn't deny his touch. Instead, she wrapped her arms around him, buried her face into his chest. There were no sobs, or anything theatrical. He held her, and she held him for what seemed like an eternity. Until the mirages dissipated into the mist, gone for now, but bound to return. "You okay?" he asked after a time. Still holding him, she looked up. Eyes red, she still smiled softly. "Yeah. Are you?" "I'll be fine." A spear of ice suddenly burst through the mist. Both of them dodged simultaneously. They stayed close, back to back. Feet away, two giant soldiers of ice emerged. They were massive, over 10 feet tall. Dressed like samurai, complete with armor made of ice, they each wielded a weapon, an axe and spear. Susumeru's eyes went wide, then narrowed to slits. Naruto and Susumeru shared a glance. No words were spoken. A fire Rasengan materialized above her palm. It looked less like a Tamari now, more refined than ever before, a dark red glow surrounding the bright ball of energy. Beside her, a glowing perfectly shaped Rasengan came to life above Naruto's palm. In unison, they shot forward, thrusting their attacks into the chests of both creatures before either could react. Her attack melted the first one, then sent it flying away, far into the mist. His attack grinded the other into fine particles of ice, then launched its remains away from sight. Two audible cracks could be heard as both ice creatures struck separate trees, both structures falling to the ground with a crash. Again, they made sure to stay close to each other in the mist. Those mirages are a distraction, Naruto said, frowning. They're meant to lure people into the mist, where those ice creatures are hiding. Damn, Susumeru hissed. Anyone can be tricked by a vision of someone they love. Family, friends, partners. She was correct. Helpless demon slayers, tired after days of fighting, would be more susceptible to such trickery. Naruto pondered how many had died, fooled into walking toward their graves. He thought of Shinobu in that moment, wondering if she was on this very mountain, plagued by images of her dead sister. His gritted teeth at the thought. Naruto shook his head, focused on the issue at hand. Shinobu could handle herself, that much he knew. Presently, they had to navigate through this mist and potentially find Michiro, which had been his primary reason for coming here. However, seeing the severity of the situation, Naruto felt the need to put an end to this madness, so no more people died, tricked by the voices of their loved ones. There, Susumeru suddenly announced. She pointed toward a section of the mist. There's a large gathering of demons in that direction, or maybe it's those ice creatures. I'm not sure. They certainly have the feel of a demon. We should head there to start. Naruto agreed. Her ability to locate demons was more accurate than his own, because it was more discriminate. He could generally sense negative emotions, sure, but he couldn't always distinguish between a human's negative emotions and a demon's, especially now, when the entire mountain was drenched in it, created by the sheer death and terror this disaster had caused. Susumeru took his hand and led him forward. Good. This way, they wouldn't be separated by the fog. Naruto formed the bird hand seal, then raised his arm, creating a small bubble of spinning air. It parted the mist, made obstacles more visible, made certain that they moved quickly, traversing the rocks, ponds, and trees that compassed the mountain. Murata panted, blood trailing down a cut along his chest. His blue haori, long discarded, flew through the air as a sudden breeze picked it up, carrying it far from sight. He frowned, but ignored it. Another icy wind blew, an unnatural wind that was no doubt a result of this horrid fog. He shivered heavily, more so from blood loss than the cold itself. His vision swam, and his legs buckled, the cuts along his body throbbed with pain, pulsing with the beat of his rapid heart. 7 days of this hell. 7 days trapped on this mountain, fighting, nothing but fighting. He hadn't slept in hours. The exhaustion was indescribable. He only wanted to lay down and rest. Just close his eyes and sleep. But he couldn't. Not when there were demon slayers to protect. And he did just that. He protected them with all his might, with everything he had. The mist swirled ever stronger, obscuring nearly everything in sight. Only that tree, that single large tree, was their beacon, their haven. As long as Murata could see it, he'd know where Izaki was. Breathing in sharply, he sliced the head of an ice creature. This one was smaller, not like those 10 feet tall behemoths that carried great axes, that could cleave a man in two with a single strike. He continued, cutting it into several more pieces, bricks of ice falling to the grass. At least, with the ice, they had water. Food was a different story, though. Murata finally moved back to the tree, feet heavy as lead. He ignored the exhaustion, ignored the pain, charging forward. When Murata arrived, he marveled at just how much their numbers had grown. Once 10, there were now at least 30 demon slayers taking shelter under the tree's large branches. Most of them were injured, having, against all odds, found their way to this place. Some of their wounds were bad, some downright awful, a death sentence if they didn't get off this mountain in time. Broken ribs, broken arms and legs, puncture wounds, severe lacerations, frostbite. The list went on. To make matters worse, their rations were running low. Food would soon be a thing of the past, making them weaker, more susceptible to those mirages. Even now, he could see them. His parents. His brothers. They stood at a distance, smiling, speaking, calling out to him, even running to him at times. It was torture. All he wanted to do was run into the fog and hug them. He wanted to apologize for being so weak back then, for not being able to protect them when they'd been murdered by a demon. His vision blurred, unshed tears brimming at the corners of his eyes. Damn it, he whispered. I thought I'd gotten used to seeing them. He'd ignored them most of the time. But now, with exhaustion taking his toll, with his injuries growing worse, he was losing his resolve, and seeing them only broke his heart. Izaki found him when he needed her most. She circled around the great tree after tending to an injured female slayer. She looked haunted, heavy bags under her eyes. Her cheeks were slightly hollowed, made so by a lack of sleep, constant fighting, and little food. She embraced him, held him close, reaching up to stroke the back of his head. I can still see them, he managed. Izaki shivered. Me too. She was probably seeing her older brother, who had saved her life. Yet, here she was, comforting him. Murata smiled at that, let her hold him. He was glad that he didn't have to be strong all the time, that he could relax with her around. Someone yelled several feet away, ending their little moment together. Izaki quickly sprang into action. Murata frowned. The spiders again, he thought. More a nuisance than anything, at least compared to the ice soldiers they descended from above, spinning thin threads around several demon slayers. Predicting their path, Izaki cut the webs and killed the spiders with a series of sword strikes. Over in seconds, the excitement died down once again. Panting, Izaki returned. The left arm was injured, hastily bandaged, coated with blood. Those things just keep coming, she said, brow furrowing with annoyance. It's like a demon out there is trying to capture us for something. Murata shrugged. Who cares what their purpose is? Tell you what though, I'd rather fight spiders than those ice things out there. Izaki gave a hollow smile. If only it were that easy. She inspected his chest. You're bleeding. It's nothing, he assured, and she didn't press the issue. They both turned to the dozens of demon slayers laying around the tree. Most of them were injured. However, several others, 6 to be exact, had formed a protective ring around the tree, blades poised, ready to fight the ice creatures in the mist. Without any more words, both Izaki and Murata made rounds on their little encampment. They made sure to see everyone they could, to assess the situation, and discuss options going forward. In the few days they'd been here, despite their rank, most of the demon slayers here had started to see them as leaders, as the ones who made the decisions. It had been startling at first. Them? Leaders. Months ago, he would have laughed at the notion. Now, however, he couldn't help but be impressed by his and Izaki's rate of growth. If they hadn't been given that mission to Tokyo, they would have likely already died on this mission. At least, Izaki was convinced she would have died. I'd probably have been killed by those webs, she'd remarked on their 5th day here, slicing the spiders apart. They soon settled down beside someone, one of the most injured people here. The demon slayer was older than them, more highly ranked too, yet he still looked at them hopefully, despite the blood leaking from the corners of his lips. Another demon slayer was replacing his bandages as Murata knelt by his side. Inosuke, normally a confident, reckless demon slayer, looked completely different. Tamer. Humbled. His wild hair was slicked with sweat, his sharp features pale. What's the situation, you two? Murata glanced at Izaki. You want us to be honest, Dai? She whispered. He nodded once. Murata cleared his throat and said, nothing has changed. Nothing at all. In fact, we're almost out of options here. Izaki sighed. We can't stay in one place forever. It's simply unsustainable. I know there's a chance the Hashira are on the way, and maybe some of them are already here, but it's been 7 days since this mission began. I don't think we can last one more. Inosuke sat up with the help of the woman by his side. Yeah, he muttered. I even think they're toying with us. I mean, look around. We've encountered at least 100 of those ice creatures. If the enemy can create that many, I don't see why they can't just send them all at once, you know. Unless this is a game to them. A way to torture us. Maybe draw more demon slayers to this mountain, where they can kill even more of us. Murata considered his words, found himself agreeing. There had to be a bigger picture here, a reason for this madness. Both of you have to find a way off this mountain, Inosuke breathed out, wincing as he moved. But we need to protect. I know, the slayer said, cutting Izaki short. He was a Hinoto, a decently high rank among the corps. But you've done enough. You two are the strongest here, our only hope of ever escaping. I know that we trust our crows have sent the message. However, we need to be certain that headquarters knows about what's happening, before we lose even more people. Izaki looked as if she wanted to protest. Murata placed his hand over hers. She held her tongue. Because Inosuke was right. They couldn't stay here forever. Soon, the waves of ice creatures would be worse, probably when the demon responsible got bored of playing. Soon, exhaustion and hunger would take its toll. Not to mention the mirages tempting them into the mist. Understood, Murata said. We'll leave, but we will come back with help. I promise. Inosuke nodded, grinning. I'll see to it that you two get a promotion. You're easily capable of achieving the Hinoto rank. Just don't let it get to your heads. When it came time to leave, both of them looked at the encampment one last time. They gazed at demon slayers they'd kept alive for the last 7 days. They did this. This was proof that they'd grown stronger, that those hours spent training were finally paying off. Izaki turned, forcing herself not to look back. Murata followed. They were silent, the mist swirling around them. Their brother suddenly appeared before her, trying to get her attention. She looked away. His voice remained, tugging at her heart. It was surreal to see him again, even more so to know that, at 20 years of age, she was now older than he was when he died. She was older than her older brother. How peculiar was that? Their entire time here had been an emotional ordeal. In the earlier days on the mountain, many comrades had been fooled into entering the mist unarmed, coaxed forward and to their deaths. They'd lost many this way, until they learned to ignore their dead family members. As the great tree grew smaller, obscured by the mist, as she and Murata left the encampment, the screams and yells rose anew. Another attack, she realized. Just when they decided to leave, too. Don't look back. Don't look back. Don't look. Izaki looked back. And froze. 4 ice giants had emerged from the swirling mist. These ones were huge, each 15 feet in height, swinging axes with immense force. A demon slayer was cleaved in two as he tried to fight back. Someone else was knocked into the tree, a horrible crunch signaling their demise. They made the choice for us, Murata hissed. We have to get off this mountain. We can't help them anymore. The yells rose, and Murata and Izaki instantly broke. They went back. Both of them ran, drawing their blades. Izaki knew that this could be the end. Engaging these 4 behemoths, after 7 days of almost non-stop fighting, would not be easy. But she didn't care. As long as they could keep the 30 demon slayers here safe, she would fight to the bitter end. Her only regret, she glanced at Murata, who was charging beside her, face determined, was that she wouldn't get to spend more time with him. They approached the first ice giant, a samurai with a lengthy ice katana. She sucked in a breath, strengthened her body for what might be her final battle. Then, the creature's head exploded. Izaki froze. The glowing red projectile had punctured the ice creature, like a knife through butter. Several more projectiles, Tamari balls, she realized, flew through the air, glowing, traveling faster than she could perceive. They were blur, punching holes through the first ice giant's glinting body. It can't be. The creature crumbled to the grass, sheets of ice spraying at her feet. Izaki felt a big smile forming on her face. She turned to Murata, who, eyes wide, was trying to find the source of that attack. In the distance, 2 silhouettes materialized from the mist. They walked hand in hand. A spinning sphere of wind parted the fog, revealing a blonde man and dark-haired woman with orange streaks in her hair. The man wore a blue, sleeveless jacket with high collars, zipped to the top. A scroll was slung around his shoulders by a single strap. Dark pants with a holster on the thigh, coupled with black foreign-looking sandals, was all Izaki needed to confirm his identity. Naruto. She gazed to the woman beside him. Her orange haori fluttered in the wind, pants and sandals identical to her companions. She held a familiar Tamari in one hand, eyes locking with Izaki's. Susumu grinned, sharp canines exposed to the world. Izaki breathed out, relaxing for the first time in days. I guess someone got our message after all, Murata said, laughing happily. Still in the distance, Susumu spoke to Naruto, whispered something Izaki couldn't hear. The blonde nodded, and she rushed forward. The demon tossed Naruto her haori, then grew 6 arms. Izaki blinked. Naruto raised his hand higher, and the sphere of wind expanded, clearing the mist for 30 meters, making the forest more visible than Izaki had ever known it to be. The collective gasp seemed to rise from the gathered demon slayers. Susumu leapt upward. 6 Tamari materialized in her 6 hands, glowing red. She took aim from above, set on destroying the 3 remaining ice giants with an aerial bombardment. Performing a majestic twirl mid-jump, she launched her weapons downward. 6 different sonic booms cracked the air as thunder would, and her Tamari descended like meteors, burning amber as they struck the ice soldiers 2 balls reserved for each of them. They burst into shards of ice, losing their structure, and falling to the grass. It was over in seconds. The demon landed gracefully on the forest floor, hands on her hips, a triumphant smirk on her face. That was no fun, she lamented, putting on a show. I thought I'd get to play with them a little longer. Naruto shook his head mirthfully at her antics. He tossed the haori back to her. Susumu gladly took it, then turned to Izaki. Well, did you miss me? She teased. Izaki embraced Susumu in that moment, much to the demon's shock. Her eyes grew wide, body stiffening, a blush tinting her pale cheeks. She seemed genuinely surprised by the gesture. Naruto chuckled. He watched with amusement as his friend quickly returned the hug, tentatively at first, before wrapping her arms around the first demon slayer she'd ever befriended. Murata walked over to him, sheathed his blade, and Naruto gladly shook his hand. I can't believe you're here, said the demon slayer. Why? How? Must be fate, Naruto joked. Then he crossed his arms. We actually received a message about demon slayers going missing on this mountain. I wasn't going to come at first, but my student urged that I do, for personal reasons. He looked around, surveying the terrain, the giants free, as well as the haggard faces of the people present. I'm glad I came, though. You don't look too good. Murata glanced down. We did our best, but this missed. It was. Naruto saw the haunted look in his eyes, then stopped him from saying any more. He rested a hand on Murata, a comforting gesture. You don't have to talk about it, he reassured. And no, you're not a failure, if that's what you're thinking. Anyone would have been blindsided by images of their loved ones showing up from nowhere. You can see it too? Murata asked. Yeah, Naruto answered. It must have been bad for them, being here for so many days, fighting almost non-stop, unable to see even a few feet in front of them, attacked at every angle, while trying to ignore cruel images tempting them into the mist. You did well, all things considered. I can tell. You and Izaki are the least injured here. You kept most of these people safe, alive long enough for help to arrive. You can relax now, okay? Murata swallowed, voice cracking. Oh okay. Thank you. Izaki hugged Naruto next. He accepted her embrace with a smile. She pulled away, letting her exhaustion finally show. For the first time in several days, she'd let her guard down, knowing that they were no longer alone. I'm assuming that headquarters knows about what's happening, then? Izaki asked. Yes, they're aware, he confirmed. I think I'm one of the last to receive the message, so help was coming sooner or later. What a relief, she whispered, shoulders sagging. Susumu made her way back to Naruto's side, tossing her Chimari up and down, then spinning it on one finger. Care to fill us in on what happened here? The demon asked. And the pair explained everything as concisely as possible. Naruto nodded after hearing them out, then lowered his hand. The sphere of wind retreated slightly, its area of effect now a more manageable 20 meters in diameter. Many demon slayers sat up, attention on both him and Susumu. Whispers of demon and blood demon art rippled through the injured crowd. Some had risen, staring. Some gripped the hilts of their swords, debating whether to be alarmed or grateful the mist was now being kept at bay. Seeing Izaki and Murata chatting with him, however, seemed to put most at ease, but a select number still looked on with distrust. At that, Izaki and Murata stood protectively in front of them. Are those demons? Someone from the group voiced. Those had to be blood demon arts just now, said another. The woman summoned glowing Tamari from nothing. And that man made the fog disappear. The whispers rose into animated chatter. Naruto rubbed his hair sheepishly, but kept his eyes on the surrounding mist, just in case more of those creatures decided to return. He hadn't seen any more mirages, either. Which was a good thing. Perhaps him dispersing the mist around them had disrupted the technique's effectiveness. I figured this would happen, Susumu all but huffed. Her Tamari disappeared as she pulled her orange Haori back on. Don't worry, said Murata. We'll tell them everything. They did. Naruto and Susumu sat atop one of the tree's large branches, overlooking the gathered demon slayers below. As promised, Murata and Izaki, quite literally, explained everything. They spoke of meeting him and Susumu in Tokyo, of their encounter with the lower moons and Shinobu Kacho, of how Susumu, despite being a demon, helped protect innocent humans from her own kind, and lastly, how, according to Master Kagaya, Naruto and his companion had been permitted to visit headquarters. Murmurs went out among the demon slayers, many of them wondering what would become of the Corps, now that they were letting a demon visit their most secret base of operations. It's a valid concern, Naruto commented. He caught Susumu's Tamari, then tried to spin the ball on his finger like she'd done earlier, realizing it was more difficult than she made it seem. Giving up, he tossed the ball to her, and she snatched it from the air, punting it back to him in a single move. Yeah, she agreed, gazing down as discourse continued below them. I don't blame him. It can be easy having your whole belief system turned upside down. Naruto noticed that, despite her destroying the giant ice creatures, most of them still shot her wary, uneasy glances. To be fair, many of them were also looking at Naruto suspiciously too, classifying him a demon as well, even though Murata had insisted he wasn't due to him freely manipulating the wind. Sorry, Susumu whispered, catching her ball as he tossed it back. Naruto arched a brow. For what? She threw it back. He caught it. This? Susumu gestured down below. They're looking at you like that, mostly because of me. I don't mind if it's only me they hate. But with you, I can't stand it, seeing that unease in their eyes directed at you. Naruto smiled, touched by her words. Don't worry. I'm used to this. She tilted her head. In what way? I've been meaning to tell you about my past, about where I come from, he explained. Believe it or not, I was considered a demon for the longest time when I was younger. Susumu stared. Really? Yup, Naruto said casually. But how can anyone think you're a demon? She asked, fuming. You're the kindest person I've ever met. That doesn't make sense. Oh, to them it did. Naruto caught her ball, observed the beautiful intricate patterns of blue, white, red, and yellow that ran along its smooth surface. Don't think too much about it right now. I'll tell you more when we get out of here. She looked stunned, then happy, as if this signaled another level of closeness between them. Susumu waved her hand, seemingly realizing something. Hey, don't be in a rush to tell me everything. Your past is yours. Speak about it when you feel like it. Naruto leaned against the tree as he tossed her ball back. You as well. She averted her gaze, and Naruto wondered if there was something she wasn't telling him, something about this mist. But more importantly, something about the creatures made of ice. She seemed particularly disturbed when she first saw them, her eyes going wide with alarm. He didn't pry though, deeming it unnecessary. If she wanted to tell him, she would tell him. How are you doing, Kurama? Naruto inquired. A rumble echoed in his mind, then Naruto was standing before his nine-tailed companion. Kurama sat cross-legged, both hands clapped together as though in prayer. The gesture was more symbolic than anything, but Naruto figured it helped the Biju focus. The further away you get from your clones, the more difficult it is to sustain the portal, explained Kurama. And now, I have to absorb even more natural energy to compensate for the distance. Meaning, I really have to avoid touching an Ichiran blade, Naruto said. Precisely. They're filled with high levels of solar radiation, yet trapped securely in the metal. I can't absorb it from afar, but if you touch one, we will surely render the blade useless. Naruto nodded. Noted. No sage mode, either. At least for now. Until we become more accustomed to transmitting chakra from this distance. Sure thing, Naruto said, then smiled. Thanks, buddy. Kurama only smirked in return, closing his eyes to focus. The whispers and questions continued below, bringing Naruto back to the real world. In that moment, he noticed the white spiders. There were hundreds of them. They seemed to appear from nowhere, crawling about, descending from above. One of them landed on his shoulder, multiple eyes fixed on him. Naruto flicked it away. He wasn't a fan of bugs, especially ones that stared at you, mesmerized. It didn't stop there, however. Instead of going after anyone else, the spiders started advancing on him. Naruto stood, understanding this was far from normal. The hell? Gross, muttered Susumu. This is what Murata was talking about. The spiders were moving more rapidly now, spinning webs around Naruto, trying to bind him, drawn to him specifically. A steel hard threads wrapped around his left arm. Naruto could feel a tug as if someone a distance away was controlling these things. They were trying to pull him toward their location. By now, the onlookers below had noticed the spiders. Some had even drawn their blades. But Naruto wasn't too concerned. He tore the threads from his body like they were made of paper, then blasted the spiders far into the mist with a gale palm. There's definitely a demon controlling those spiders, Naruto commented, then sat back down as though nothing major had happened. Yeah, Susumu agreed, relaxing. Naruto stared down at the slayers below. He counted at least 30 of them. Most were injured. 2 were recently dead, killed by those ice soldiers. After several more minutes of deliberation among them, Izaki waved at him. Naruto took that as his cue and leapt down. Some of them flinched back. He shrugged, but smiled anyway, making his way to the wounded. He performed first aid on the most injured. He healed them as best he could, still conserving chakra for battles he would still fight on this mountain. While he worked, Susumu kept watch. In the time it took for him to assess all the demon slayers present, several more ice creatures had attacked, bursting through the mist. They weren't as large as the last 4, but they were certainly more numerous. If anything, Naruto had to admit that the demon responsible for creating these creatures was quite the artist. Every ice soldier had a unique design, a unique build, even a unique fighting style. Susumu made quick work of them, protecting the vulnerable people beneath the tree. No one else had to lift a finger or risk their lives. While she was there, they could let their guard down for the first time since coming to Mount Natagumo. Some had even gone to sleep, feeling comfortable enough to lay their heads down and rest. Others, still wary of both him and Susumu, remained awake, their Nichiren blades held closely. Izaki was asleep next to Murata, the latter gently stroking her messy black hair. She snuggled up against him, features relaxed, peaceful. Naruto glanced at Susumu. She stood upon a tree branch, vigilantly peering into the mist, prepared to spring into action. She caught his gaze, then winked. He smiled, mouthing, "You're doing a good job." She beamed at that, then returned to her task. Below, Naruto wrapped a clean bandage, summoned from his scroll, around a young man's head. His name was Takeuchi, and he looked awfully young, even among the youthful demon slayer corps. He was Murata's friend, apparently. As a result, he seemed to trust Naruto more readily than the others. Naruto focused chakra into Takeuchi's head. The bleeding stopped in seconds. That feels, a chill ran down Takeuchi's body. I feel much better. Thank you. He patted the demon slayer's shoulder and stood. Then, for the 20th time, the spiders descended. Naruto grimaced. They just kept coming and coming. He was getting tired of dealing with them. Naruto quickly went further away from the tree, and the spiders followed him, trying relentlessly to tie him up and drag him away. It didn't bother him the first few times, but when 3 resting demon slayers had been caught in the crossfire, covered in threads, he became more concerned. Like he'd done many times before, he blasted the spiders away from the encampment, then made his way to Murata. How long has this been happening? Naruto asked. Looking up, Murata said, since we first got here. At the beginning, they were difficult to manage. Thankfully, we didn't lose anyone. Only the ice creatures were a problem. He glanced away. Then, once we figured out their patterns, it became even easier to manage the spiders. But it's gotten worse since I arrived, Naruto concluded. Murata nodded. Don't get me wrong, Naruto, he added quickly. You've been a great help. We probably wouldn't have lasted another day if you didn't arrive when you did. We're grateful. Naruto chuckled. I'm not offended or anything, Urata. You're just stating a fact. I noticed it too. They're drawn to me. Probably my blood, honestly. Even as they spoke, more and more white spiders emerged, crawling about, advancing toward his location. Susumu noticed and culled them all, sharp eyes roaming about. Naruto crossed his arms, deliberating the best action to take. Then he decided, forming a cross with his fingers. A shadow clone materialized next to him in a puff of smoke. And even though he had seen this technique before, Naruto still marveled as an identical version of Naruto appeared from thin air. I'm going, Naruto announced. Urata sat up. Where? I'm going to find the source of these spiders, Naruto explained, loud enough for Susumu to hear him. I think that's the first step to getting all of you off this mountain safely. Urata hesitated, wanted to protest, but he eventually nodded. Alright. If that's what you feel is best. Not like I can stop you, anyway. Naruto smiled softly, then leapt up the branch his friend was standing on. Did you catch that? I did. Susumu crossed her arms. She didn't protest, though. Are you sure? Positive. She looked down, conflicted. But you'll be back in the mist. You'll see things again. I'm sure I will, and I'll face them head-on, like I always do, he reassured. Then I'll stay and look after these guys with your clone, Susumu promised. See you soon. Of course, Su, he said. Nodding, she reached out and bumped his fist. It didn't take long for the spiders to appear again, most of them going after him. Naruto let the insects wrap his arms in that thin, yet steel-hard thread. In seconds, he was bound. Then, something or someone yanked him, hard. His stomach lurched. He was pulled away from the great tree, demon slayers gawking as he was suddenly lifted and reeled through the air, picking up speed in seconds. He was plunged back into the mist, wind whipping at his hair. Surprisingly, it was much more forceful than he expected. He didn't even touch the ground. He simply sailed backward like a kite, ducking beneath branches, avoiding thorns and brambles. Crack. Naruto turned sharply to the left. A sound like thunder rattled the forest. In that moment, he saw something fantastic. Hauled into a clearing, Naruto witnessed, despite the mist, a golden-haired demon slayer in action. He was fast. Dare he say, as fast as Shinobu in that moment. He ricocheted off several tree trunks, sailing upward, a sonic boom left in his wake. With a single sword swing, he decapitated a spider-like demon, parting clouds of mist in the process. Naruto whistled. Whoa. His swiftness. His precision. His raw power. Naruto marveled at the flawlessness of his technique. There were some truly amazing people out there, even without chakra to aid them. He wasn't Yuichiro's brother, though, that much he could tell. But still, who was this kid? Relief. Mother's veins flooded with relief. Finally. She finally captured someone. After days of failure, someone had been ensnared by her webs. And now, she was pulling them along, where she could tie them up further and deliver them to daughter, who would then deliver them to Upper Moon too. At first, she thought capturing demon slayers would be easy. With the mist affecting only outsiders, she had been free to catch as many as she could, unaffected by Wakiraba mirages. However, her assumptions were completely wrong. The demon slayers proved more skilled than she'd originally thought. And as time wore on, and her spiders became more predictable, she failed repeatedly, not capturing even a single person, unlike daughter, who caught an abundant amount. Every time she tried, she'd feel a tug, only for her webs to be severed, her initial tactics going up in smoke. That had led to more torture from Rui, more pain, more agony. He hurt her more gravely than ever before, spurred on by recent admiration for Doma. And she, being weaker than them, could do nothing but endure their gruesome punishment. The fear of having her torso split in half again made work harder, faster. Mother pulled her latest catch in, powerful arms reeling them through the air. Even from a distance, she could smell their blood. Wow. The aroma struck her like a falling boulder. She shivered and shook, tremors running down her body. She'd never felt like this before, never experienced such a wonderful scent. All human blood smelled wonderful to her. But not like this. This was unlike anything she'd ever encountered. There was a sweetness to it, a warmth to it, an aroma that didn't make her mouth water. No, it did the opposite. It made her eyes water. How could something so wonderful exist? And how could she ever justify capturing a person who felt so damn beautiful? Only someone truly evil, someone wretched and disturbed would ever hurt a precious being like this. Sadly, she was that evil person. She was ruined, broken beyond repair. With one last tug, her captive burst through the mist. Mother's eyes went wide. His golden hair fluttered in the wind. Somehow, he torn free of her webs, holding the silver threads with a single hand. Time seemed to slow as he sailed forward, something glowing, something blue and beautiful hovering just above his palm. Mother knew that only pain awaited her. She could feel it. She would suffer one last time, her punishment for trying to destroy the life of a special person like this. Mother dropped her hands on her lap. Tears flowed down her pale cheeks. Finally, she accepted it. She accepted an end to this nightmare. What better way to die than at the hands of this beautiful human? If he killed her, then the torment would finally end. She would be released from hell. She shut her eyes and accepted her fate, banging her head low, a clear sign of submission. Yet the pain never came. Eyes still closed, she waited for him to attack her, to torture her, then decapitate her. Nothing. Seated on her lone rock, Mother looked up, meeting sea blue eyes. He raised that glowing sphere to the sky instead. A blast of wind erupted upward as he released the technique, blowing apart the mist around them. The air continued to travel, parting more and more of Wakuraba's stubborn fog, until she could see the sky above her. The moon shined down, bathing her little settlement in rays of silver light. For the first time in days, she was blessed with a sight she loved so much, a sight that had been her only solace, while she fought to keep her sanity in this hell. She continued to look, stunned by the beauty above her. The majestic moon hung high, alone in the sky, just like her on her lonely rock. "So, you're the one responsible for all those annoying webs," the blonde said, speaking to her for the first time. She looked down at her feet, unsure of what to say. Now in front of her, the scent of his blood overpowered her senses. She shuddered but kept herself in check. Her body screamed eat him, yet her mind shouted preserve him. Such a special person should not be taken to Doma, where he would be tortured. She clenched her fists, clawed hands digging into her palms. For someone who didn't like pain, she used it to still the urge to devour him. The blonde took notice of this, intrigue coloring his whiskered features. His eyes shined a little brighter, and he sat down beside her. No caution. No malice. Only curiosity she could not comprehend. Shivering and shuddering, she forced herself to sit still. With each passing second, her white kimono was painted red with blood, as she continued to dig into her own flesh, utilizing pain in a way she never thought she could. Once a weakness, once something used to threaten her, to traumatize her, it was now a strength. "I am sorry," Mother stammered desperately. "I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want to do this anymore." Despite being next to a demon, he wasn't alarmed. Why was that? "You know," he said, smiling, "I've only met one demon that resisted my blood for this long without trying to attack me. His blood. How she longed for it, how she thirsted for it. And yet, Mother held herself back, summoning a strength she never knew she had. "I came here fully prepared to kill you," he continued, then looked upward. "Now, I'm not so sure. Call me stupid. Call me sentimental. I don't care. But seeing you bow your head in surrender," he chuckled. It made me want to save you." "Save her? How? Why?" Shivering with effort, Mother spoke. I can't be saved. I deserve death. I'm evil." "Because you've killed people, right?" the blonde said, then stood. He fixed her with a hard stare. "Well, save it, demon. I've heard that one before." Mother flinched. What? "You heard me," he said, arms crossed. "Give me a better excuse for why you want to escape the trouble you've caused." "Escape the trouble I've caused?" "Exactly." He pointed at her, a single accusatory finger. "You're trying to escape, trying to leave it all behind by dying, without even attempting to change a single thing." That's not true," Mother pleaded. "I need to die. I need to." She shut her mouth, trailing off. Because truly, he was right. She wanted to die, not because it was justice, or recompense for her crimes. No. She wanted to escape from Rui, from the past. She wanted out, simple as that. In the end, even while trying to do the right thing, she was still a coward that couldn't admit her true reason for wanting to die. Mother gritted her teeth. "Then how?" she begged. "What should I do? I don't want to suffer anymore. I don't want to kill anymore. Please, tell me how." Nails still digging into her palms, she glimpsed the kindest set of eyes she'd ever seen, eyes that reminded her of someone who had loved her before she became a demon. "How about this?" he suggested. "Tell me your story first, then I'll offer a solution to your problem." The dam burst then, and she told him everything. Mother told him of how she'd come to this mountain to escape humans hunting her, having just been turned into a demon. How Rui had coerced her to join his family, promising safety. How, despite being the youngest demon here, she'd been forced to play the role of mother, even though she didn't know the first thing about being a mother. How could she? She told him of how she'd been tortured for the simplest mistakes. How she'd been forced to capture people, to defend the mountain, under threat of extreme violence. And lastly, how 3 members of the 12 had come to the mountain and instigated the trouble now facing the demon slayers. She revealed it all to him, all while holding herself back, all while resisting the urge to attack him by inflicting pain on herself, the one thing she hated the most. It was worth it though. As long as she didn't harm him, the pain was an afterthought. When she was done speaking, Mother found him holding her bleeding hand. "What are you doing?" she panicked. "I'll hurt you. He gently shushed her. "I don't know how it works myself, and maybe I never will," the man began. "But I have a decent track record of befriending demons. If you come with me, you won't be alone ever again. There are a few like you, demons that no longer want to remain under Musen, or the 12. Demons that want to right the wrongs of the past. I know them personally. They're earnest, playful, caring, and sweet. They won't hurt you. And, eventually, they'll love you for you." Was it possible? Could she really leave this place forever? Could she escape the torture by any means other than death? Could she right her past wrongs? She glanced at him, still holding her hand, still looking at her with a bright smile. Mother sobbed, bared her soul before this man. Take me with you, she pleaded. Take me away from this place. I don't want to die. I only want to stop hurting. Please. In caring arms. Naruto found himself tearing up at the sight as she asked him to save her. As horrible as demons could be, many of them were sad creatures. Turned against their will, tricked, coerced, some even as children. Many had been thrust into a world they never consented to, pulled along by unnatural urges brought on by an outside force. The woman took his blood on that lone rock, crying, arms wrapped around him with a grip so tight, it seemed she would never let go. They stayed like this for a time, bathed in the glow of moonlight. Then, something remarkable happened. The pale woman began to change before him. Her hair shifted from silver to jet black. Her onyx locks were long and beautiful, 2 bangs framing a comely face, 2 pigtails tied tightly behind her shoulders. Her skin gained a sheen of color. Her eyes turned a different shade, from pale gray to glittering yellow, defined by X-shaped pupils. She shrank, too. That was the shocking part. She became smaller, her clothes now too big, until she was the size of, in his estimation, an 8-year-old child. And her most crowning feature were the 2 whisker-like marks that defined each cheek, much like his own, only thicker. Hot, Naruto marveled. She really was the youngest among her spider family, wasn't she? Must have been turned relatively recently, as a mere child, too. She continued to hold him, small hands clutching at his clothes. I changed, the demon spoke in a small voice. She looked up at him. And I can't feel Rui anymore. His blood must have overridden the control that lower moon had over her. She hugged Naruto again, resting her head against him. Thank you. Naruto gently tousled her hair. You're welcome. Cheeks reddening, she looked up shyly. What's your name? Naruto Uzumaki, he answered. Naruto, the demon girl repeated, testing the name. And what about yours? The girl glanced away, biting her lip. I don't remember. Oh, he remarked. I'm sorry about that. She'd been mother since coming here, since being influenced by this Rui's blood, forced to take on a different form. Of course, she was having a hard time remembering. Can you give me a name? She asked nervously, after thinking long and hard. If you want me to, Naruto replied. She nodded vigorously. Just know that you don't have to keep it forever. Once you remember your old name, we can change it. The demon girl nodded again. She gazed at him expectantly, almost desperately, yearning to leave the mother role behind. Naruto glanced up at the clear sky, at the moon, which was now being obscured as new mist rushed to fill the sudden vacancy. How about Tsuki? He suggested. Her eyes went wide. She gazed up as well, catching one last glimpse of that silver, celestial body. Tsuki, she whispered. Moon. The girl bounced happily. I love it. She hugged him once more, and he laughed softly. I'm glad you do. After several more minutes, Tsuki began falling asleep. She rubbed at her eyes, head bobbing with the same exhaustion that had befallen Susumaru and Yuhaba after they'd first taken his blood. I'm going to place you in this scroll, okay? He said. It won't be painful, and you won't feel any discomfort, either. Tsuki nodded, emerald eyes full of childlike trust. She didn't question him, didn't ask how he'd do it. I'll see you again, won't I? She inquired. He smiled warmly. Yes, you will. Tsuki looked down sorrowfully, then whispered, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for trying to capture so many demon slayers, and for trying to capture you too. I would excuse your actions, Naruto replied, thoughtful. However, you were under the threat of torture. Pain can make us do things we might not necessarily want to do. She bit her lip. I still had a choice though. You did. But you can't change the past. Acknowledging the wrong you did is the first step to atoning, Naruto offered. You'll make it up to them someday. Tsuki nodded, still saddened, yet full of newfound hope. I will. I promise you I will. When she finally fell asleep, he unraveled his scroll and sealed the demon girl inside, where she would rest, undisturbed by what he felt was coming. Daughter bolted, ran like hell. She'd seen it all, obscured by the mist. Mother had changed. Fucking changed. She'd reverted to her original form, a serious taboo among them. It would only lead to severe punishment from father, Rui, and maybe even that strange upper moon. Worse yet, mother hadn't eaten the human, despite his blood being so inviting. The stupid bitch hadn't even tried to kill him, for fuck's sake. Daughter seethed, horrid angry veins bulging along her face. Her mouth still watered. Excitement shivered through every cell in her body. She fantasized about what he tasted like, thought of what his innards looked like once torn them away from his body. She would have loved to attack him. She'd wanted to. Wrap him up in her webs and dissolve him to mere bone, then enjoy his remains. But something wasn't right about that person, besides his irresistible blood. Something else about him was wrong, and any action she took against him screamed certain death. With the mountain crawling with demon slayers, she had to be cautious. A Hashira might be among them. Maybe that man was a Hashira. She was no Twelve Kazuki, and Rui was far stronger than her. That's why she ran, trying to find her younger brother, keen on telling him all that had occurred. She followed a distinct path. Lower Moon 3 cleared the way. With his mist, he could track every living thing on the mountain. He must have noticed her, having marked her, and was now altering his blood demon art, shifting it into something more ally-friendly. She had to tell Rui. She just had to. If she brought him this vital piece of information, then maybe he would promote her. Maybe she would become second in command despite being the sister. And most importantly, she giggled, maybe Rui would share the remains of that blonde human after he'd killed him. One demon down, Naruto thought. Well, technically not down. But the point remained. Tsuki's spiders had been stopped, and the encampment of injured demon slayers was now safer for it. No one would force her to do anything against her will again. He'd make sure of it. With his clone and Susumaru protecting the demon slayers, Naruto was certain they would all survive. Right now, he was running through the mist. It reminded him of Zabuza's famous jutsu, that endless fog of death, where a single wrong move could result in your end. What a nightmare that technique had been, especially as a child, stalked by an ultra-silent, ultra-skilled ninja that could cleave you in half with a swing of his deadly blade. This was similar, but also different. He was seeing things, all manner things. Shadows swarmed around him, unknowable at first, but as he approached, they took on the faces of loved ones, even enemies. He saw Team 7 again, saw Tsunade and Gar. He even saw his parents. He heard their voices, too. They whispered, sometimes yelled, trying to get his attention. Naruto ignored them all. Right now, he was tailing the demon that had been watching him and Tsuki from afar. The demon thought they'd gotten away, hidden by the fog. But they'd been close enough to Naruto that he could feel heavy malice pouring from them, something he hadn't at all felt with Tsuki. Naruto followed them, hopefully back to their base of operations, where he could put an end to this annoying mist. He ducked under branches as he was bombarded with mirages from the fog. Some were meant to distract him. Some were meant to throw him off course. The forest itself shifted and twisted unnaturally. Trees appeared from nowhere. New paths sprung from thin air. A deep hole materialized in the ground, an attempt to frighten him. The grass turned into a raging waterfall, another delaying tactic. This would have confused most, but Naruto maintained a rapidly spinning bubble of air around him. Whenever a mirage made contact with the wind, it would be distorted, ruining the image, letting him know it wasn't real. 3 soldiers of ice came running toward him from the fog. Chakra flaring, Naruto destroyed 3 of them with a roundhouse kick. He continued onward, getting closer to the fleeing demon. He could have easily overtaken them, but he needed to stay far enough away that they weren't aware of his scent. This way, the demon could potentially lead him to the one causing the mist. When billowing as he ran, Naruto almost crashed headfirst into a hulking monster. Changing course, he veered to the right, then slowed to a halt. The creature was real. It was massive too. At least 12 feet tall and composed of pure muscle. Its face was like that of a spider, multiple eyes glinting in the mist. Sharp protrusions erupted from its arms, skin black as obsidian. And in the giant's hand was a boar. Naruto squinted. No, not a boar. The creature was crushing the head of a demon slayer. He was young, probably no older than Tanjiro. He was more muscular though, and shirtless. His jagged swords were broken, blood leaking from his mask which was just the head of a wild pig. He squirmed as the spider creature continued to squeeze, seconds from popping his head like a grape. Naruto ran forward. Cocking a fist, he punched the demon, shattering its ribs with a single blow. The monster flew, letting go of the boy. It crashed through a tree, tumbling away in a heap. Naruto scooped the boar boy in his arms as the tree collapsed to the forest floor, leaping back. Ha! The boy spoke deliriously. He looked up at Naruto, features hidden beneath that unique mask. Who the hell are you? More surprising than his injuries was the deepness of the kid's voice. A rich, raspy baritone. Naruto grinned down at him, still holding him. The spider demon emerged from the mist. Its injuries were already healing, the hole Naruto had punched through its chest closing. Morbidly, it reminded him of when Sasuke had torn a hole in his lung with a chidori. Shaking his head at the memory, he turned as the creature charged, ground shaking beneath it. Now upon them, it punched with all its might. Naruto held up a palm, stopping the creature dead its tracks, hand closing around its outstretched fist. As a child in the forest of death, he'd halted Orochimaru's building-sized snake with nothing but his body and a pair of kunai. This creature was a joke in comparison. Naruto gripped its fist, then flung the spider over his shoulder. For a while, he considered trying to talk with the demon, to reason with it. But the sheer malice pouring from it, the blind rage and bloodlust, made him toss away that option. It didn't speak, didn't consider other options, only attacked, drool leaking from its spider-like maw. Hey, Naruto said, glancing down. Let me see that sword of yours. The boy, looking on with what Naruto assumed was awe, slowly handed him his broken Nichiren sword. His weapon had been split in two, only the hilt and half of the blade remaining. Its skin is too damn tough, the boy explained, seething even in his injured state. If I can't cut through it, I don't think anyone can. A bit cocky, wasn't he? Naruto took the boy's broken blade, casually leaping back as the demon tried to grab him. Once he held the Nichiren katana, his and Kurama's long-standing theory was finally confirmed. The dense natural energy contained within its special steel was immediately absorbed into Naruto's body. This wasn't a conscious decision on his part, nor was it enough natural energy for him to enter Sage mode, but it was enough for the blade to start losing its distinct blue sheen. He'd only ever held Azaki's Nichiren sword, but he'd done so for seconds at most, and at that point, Kurama hadn't been absorbing as much natural energy as he was presently. So now, he knew for sure. There goes that idea, he thought. Well, maybe not entirely. Again, the demon charge. Mindless. Unreasonable. Naruto ducked out of the way, still carrying the boy. The spider demon became more agitated, ripped apart his skin, and grew a tougher hide. Now it's gotten even stronger. The boy bellowed. Let me go. I'm gonna kill that damn demon if it's the last thing I do. Naruto didn't let him go. Instead, he leaped back again, putting some distance between him and the spider. Give me your other sword, Naruto instructed, discarding the dull blue blade in his grasp. I don't know why you'd want it if. Just hand it over. The boy fumed, but acquiesced. The demon began to charge, kicking up mounds of dirt as it ran toward them. Naruto slinged the boy over his shoulder, took the other broken blade, still fresh with solar energy, then immediately threw it like a boomerang before he and Kurama could absorb a substantial amount. The sword spun through the air, akin to rotor blades, clearing 20 meters in a blink. It severed the demon's head clean off, blood spraying the air as the creature fell in a heap. The sword continued forward, cutting several thick tree branches in half before disappearing from view, lost to the mist. Silence reigned. The boy, bleeding underneath his mask, craned his neck to look at the demon, who was now burning away, body disintegrating into ash. Then he glanced at Naruto, unmoving. You actually cut through him, whispered the boy, deep voice distorted by the boar's head. He sounded utterly shocked. Amazing. So, he could be humble. Suddenly, the boy leapt out of Naruto's hold, landing on his feet. He seemed to glimmer with respect. Despite his mask, his body language spoke of some newfound admiration. He took a deep breath, then bellowed, Fight me, Whiskers guy. Whiskers guy. Ha. The teen pointed straight at him. You heard me. Fight me. You beat a member of the 12 Kazuki, with a broken sword, too. And now, right here, I'm gonna beat you. If I can do that, he paused for dramatic effect, then that will make me the strongest of them all. Naruto barked out a laugh, completely smitten by this boy's boisterous personality. What are you laughing at? He howled. I'm being completely serious here. Fight me. FF fight. He trailed off, swaying like a drunkard. Seemed like the blood loss was finally catching up to him. Naruto caught the boy before he could fall and injure himself any further. In spite of his fierce protests, Naruto got, more like forced, him to sit down. Look. I promise to fight you if you lay still and let me examine you, he offered. The demon slayer considered his words, then crossed his arms. Fine. Do whatever you want. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, by the way. What's your name? Inosuke Hashibir. Mountain god of the great forest. Soon to be strongest demon slayer alive. After I defeat you, that is. But, I'm not a demon slayer, Naruto jetpanned. Oh? Well, I'll still be the strongest of them all in no time. Naruto smiled. Sure, Inosuke. Now, sit still. I need to take off your mask, okay? Inosuke hesitated, but shrugged. Careful of his injuries, Naruto gently removed the boar head. He received another shock. The boy's face was so delicate. Beautiful, even. There was a fascinating contrast between his muscled physique and his comely features. It made Naruto realize just how young this boy was. Lay down, he instructed. Inosuke did, most of his energy now sapped, blood leaking from his mouth and a nasty cut on his temple. A severe concussion. Fractured ribs. Some internal damage too. He would have liked to heal all of Inosuke's injuries, but for now, he was focused on first aid. Thorough medical work would come later. Naruto directed his chakra into the young slayer's head, then his ribs, then his abdomen, targeting his most pressing wounds. I feel better, Inosuke exclaimed. He sat up, still injured, but healthier than he'd been earlier. Hey. How did you do that just now? Beat me and fight, and I'll tell you how, Naruto cheese. Inosuke just about got ready to spar, but Naruto held up a hand. Not now. After this mission is over. Deal. Inosuke studied him for a moment, then nodded. Deal. Good. He stood as well. Now, first thing, Inosuke. That wasn't a member of the 12. He didn't have a number engraved on his eyes. Second, did you come to this mountain alone? Crossing his arms, Inosuke shook his head. I came with 2 other guys. We ended up getting split up. The teen glanced around. Mostly because of this stupid fog. They both went nuts, I tell you, running off into the distance, chasing something that wasn't there. But you weren't affected? Naruto asked. Inosuke looked triumphant. Of course not. I'm the strongest, didn't I tell you? Naruto considered this for a moment. Either Inosuke was delusional, which was very plausible, or actually telling the truth. Put your mask back on, he instructed. Maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe it didn't. If anything, the mask certainly muffled Inosuke's loud voice, which was a good thing, for Naruto's eardrums, at least. The Kaza entered their makeshift headquarters with clenched fists, mind buzzing with excitement. And a sizable amount of fear. He shivered heavily, not from the cold of Doma's intricate structures, but from the rush of endorphins still raging through his body. He felt alive, truly. More alive than he'd been in a long, long time. Their exchange, their clash, thought brief, was the closest he had come to death since becoming a demon. It felt exhilarating. In a way he never thought possible. He couldn't describe it, but that moment, an inch away from life and death, had awoken something in him, a newfound strength that came only from an insurmountable struggle. The black-haired demon slayer, the Kaza thought, a demon with orange streaks in her hair, another demon with eyes on his hands, and a blonde human male. Those four. Muzan had given them specific instructions to either capture or kill them. At first, he didn't understand why. He couldn't fathom why Muzan would single out two seemingly random humans. Besides the demons, who had somehow revolted, like the famed fugitive Tomeo, he saw no reason to pay attention to the others. Until now, that is. The blonde man had also been carrying someone, and the more Kaza thought about it, the clearer the image became. The orange-haired demon had been with him as well. A coincidence? He didn't think so. The Kaza glanced up, frowning at the egotistical demonstration that lay before him. Everything was made of ice. Doma had been busy since coming here, flexing his so-called artistic muscles, and creating a frozen palace that was as lavish as it was intricate. Multiple winding stairs led to a glittering shrine. A river, not yet frozen, flowed through the structure's center, which consisted of a grand gate with glittering carvings etched upon its surface. And multiple rooms, more akin to prison cells, hung high above the Kaza, rising into the thick mist. Within these rooms were dozens of demon slayers, which the spider daughter, as well as Doma's creatures, had delivered from the mist. The captive humans reached out with frostbitten hands, crying out for mercy, as Doma's biting ice chilled them to the bone. The cries of the women, specifically, made a Kaza grit his teeth. He ignored that faint memory crawling up from the back of his mind. That memory of a sickly young woman. Instead, he focused on the rematch he knew would soon occur. Doma sat at the highest point of his palace, the shrine. He gazed down from above, smiling that cold, dead smile as he held the severed head of a female demon slayer between pale hands. Again, Akaza pushed aside the anger bubbling within him at the sight. Lord Akaza. He didn't pay upper to any mind. Lord Akaza Doma repeated, waving happily. Hey, I know you hear me. Why don't you join me up here for a light snack? You seem awfully bored, lingering out there all on your own. Come on up. Let's have a chat. Please. I don't have anything to say to you, he finally replied. The mission is going well. He glanced at the imprisoned demon slayers, as far as I can tell. There were at least 50 of them, all locked in cages like animals, held captive by frozen walls. Only a few more left to capture before the Biwa woman teleports us out of here, Akaza thought. In that remaining time, he hoped to locate the blonde man for another fight, one where he would be ready with his blood demon art. It may seem like the mission is going well, Doma sulked from above, voice echoing downward, but I still haven't managed to catch even one Hashir. Worse yet, more and more of my ice golems have been destroyed, especially during the past few hours. Akaza's heart quickened at the mention of that fact. There was only one explanation for the sudden destruction of Doma's creatures. The blonde man, thought Akaza. Maybe a Hashira is responsible, mused Doma. They're bound to have entered the mountain by now. What do you think? Why don't you come down from there and find out yourself? Akaza asked bluntly. But it's so much more fun up here, pouted Doma. Akaza shook his head. Do whatever you want, he muttered, then turned to the demon he'd come here for. Wakiraba. Lower Moon 3 sat on a tree branch with his legs crossed and his eyes closed. The scarred demon was focused, deep in thought, spreading out this mist, along with his senses, to all areas of the mountain. Akaza's eyes narrowed. This form of battle, waiting and hiding in the shadows, fooling people with petty illusions, was nothing but a coward's way to fight. He held no respect for those who didn't face their foes head-on, unaided by underhanded tactics. You can locate people in the mist, correct? He questioned. Wakiraba cracked open an eye, stiffening when he saw Akaza. Yes, Lord Akaza, he answered carefully, clearly intimidated. But I can't find specific people, if that's what you're asking. To me, they're just like dots on a map, no defining attributes, no clear faces. Nothing like that. Akaza crossed powerful arms, considering. Can you also see Doma's ice constructs? I can, said the lower moon. Unlike humans, they have a more distinct feel to them. Then I want you to pinpoint the location of the person currently destroying most of Doma's constructs, Akaza stated. Wakiraba closed his eyes once again. I see a large number of ice constructs disappearing in 4 separate locations. The one destroying the most, however, is currently moving, and moving fast. They're headed here. Akaza grinned. That's him. Who? Akaza's smile turned into a frown. Doma had created an ice clone from thin air, one identical to him, using the mist's moisture as a water source. The clone tilted its head, blank eyes appraising. This is none of your business. Do not interfere, Akaza said coldly. He turned to Wakiraba. Lead me to his location. At that, a clear path appeared in the mist. Akaza turned, broke into a sprint, and didn't look back. Earlier, he'd been able to sense the blonde's battle spirit despite the mist. But now, he couldn't. At least, not like before. Why was that? No matter. Now that he had a trail, there would be no stopping him. Wakiraba, when Akaza arrives, inform me of his location, Doma's clone said with a smile. I'm quite curious about where he's headed. Wakiraba hesitated. Can't you see through your ice constructs, Lord Doma? He inquired. The ice clone nodded. Yes, but it's disorienting looking through so many. They're mostly on auto now. Anyway, just let me know, so I can have some more fun. Wakiraba swallowed. Oh, of course, Lord Doma. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed this what if and want to see next part of it, comment down below and let me know. Also share this video with your friends. See you in the next video. Peace.